Mission accomplished. Welcome to Bonehead Radio, now that we're done with all that. So, today, we're excited. The reason being is because Steve, I was going to say something smart ass. Can we start over?
No.
Why?
Because I like seeing you screw up.
All right. Welcome to Bonehead Radio. I'm Joe Lewis.
I'm McDonald's Budweiser Apple Products.
James Thomas, what the?
And this is our second attempt at trying to do the intro for this show because
I know, it's really like maybe our fifth.
It's more like the third. Yeah, it's went bad. I don't know how it's went bad. We're all
bad scene, man.
We're all fathers. We have
scene.
children. And some of us are still children. He has meat juice. In his juice, not juice, juice. He has meat juice in his nose. Anyway.
He is getting released in October.
Yeah, well, okay. So let's go on to something else. Let's talk about our episode. What's our topic for this episode?
Stephen King.
The only king, except for Elvis.
How about Martin Luther?
And that guy.
Richard III. Henry VIII, I am.
All right, you've made your point. There have been other kings. Have any of them been named Stephen?
I'm sure there's some guy named like Stevie King, drive the truck.
There is not. It's just Stevie Nicks.
Charlemagne.
His name wasn't Stephen.
King Tut. Oh wait, I can't do Steve Martin sitting down, and I refuse to stand up.
Anyway.
It's probably best if you don't.
So, the thing about Stephen King is...
I'm the Stephen Hawking's of sitting down.
No.
Well, that actually brings up a point.
He's the Stephen Hawking of idiocy.
Yeah, so, yeah, anyway.
Of sitting down. Anyway, well, the thing about Stephen King is that there's a ton of Stephen King adaptations. Whether you're talking about miniseries, whether you're talking about movies in the actual theater, whether you're talking about the short films, and Haley's talked about that before. Haley, our wonderful producer. The dollar shorts, right?
Yeah.
The $1 things where he'll actually let people do short stories and only charge them $1. They can't make any money at it. There's a ton of those that he's done over the years. Frank Darabont actually did The Woman in the Room or something before. And Frank Darabont's the guy that went on to direct The Green Mile, Shawshank Redemption, The Mist.
Walking Dead.
Walking Dead. I'm talking about the Stephen King
but
ones.
I'm talking about
what
else. I mean,
he
most
created The
people would
Walking
know.
Dead, right? Yeah, and most people
and then they got rid of him.
And then they fired him, and then he's still in court trying to get his money.
Actually, did you hear that they're suing in general? Like
No.
AMC is getting sued by the creator Kirkman and all of them.
Robert Kirkman.
Yeah. Robert Kirkman and a bunch of them because they said that since AMC makes it and airs it, unlike a lot of their shows like Better Call Saul, which is made by somebody else, that they've been actually secreting away money.
Oh, I'm sure. It's been going on for years. Anyway, let's get back to Stephen King. So, a lot of people have done that. It started with the first adaptation of Carrie, and the next, Mr. Mercedes is on right now on AT&T or something like that.
Yeah,
I haven't watched it yet. I've read the books. So we could do tons of episodes on Stephen King. We could just do some of the books. We could just do some of the miniseries. We could just do some of the movies. Hell, we could do an episode about just the sequels, right? Mm-hmm. So I was doing this today as I was going through looking at research. There's 63. If you do not include sequels, you just include remakes and stuff that's been done up until this point, there's 63. 63 movies or television series or TV miniseries.
And there's about 15 in the works currently.
Oh, there's a ton in the works. I didn't even include them all. Only ones I included that are in the works right now that are the Castle Rock series, because I know that's getting made. Yeah. It comes out next month, and Gerald's Game is shot. It just isn't out yet.
Yeah.
So there's another.
There's the Talismans.
Yeah, there's a ton of other ones. I didn't put them on there. So we have a lot to talk about. And we're going to go through them chronologically because Chad and I were talking. We decided we're not going to do the best and then the worst. We're just going to kind of rip them as we go. Some of them we really love. Some of them we really don't like. There's shades of Stephen King and how much we love him. Stephen King's my favorite living author. Chad?
Agreed.
James, not so much.
I mean, no offense meant to Stephen King.
Yeah, he's all Dean Koontz. Oh, wait, that's a joke.
No.
Koontz? Yeah, he prefers Hideaway.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I was about to say, actually, Harlan Ellison.
Haley, who's your favorite living author? Stephen King. She loves Stephen King. Haley and I went and saw The Dark Tower the other day.
And?
Well, that's an hour and a half Haley and I got to spend together, I guess, in the movie. She bought popcorn.
You boned it.
Did you say boned it or bonded it?
Oh my God.
I'm old. You know I know her dad,
Yes,
right?
that's right. She bonded. She put in your dentures for you.
That
I
was
stole
true.
all the popcorn.
Oh, I was going to make a James
And I stole
Bond
all the
reference.
popcorn.
You're
Anyway,
gonna make a what?
I was going to make a James Bond reference. Joe just kept walking into the room going, da-da-da-da!
Anyway, moving right
Read
along.
your coots.
Read your coots. So,
Hideaway.
let's
Not
go
bad.
ahead and get started with the first adaptation, Carrie, which was his first published novel. Carrie's directed by Brian De Palma, came out in the same year as Rocky. Is that 76?
76.
76.
Rocky, I know.
Right. Because I took a film class at Hazard Community College 20 years ago, and they talked about as far as the red, white, and blue, and how that was is it bicentennial?
Bicentennial.
It was bicentennial, and all the things that were going on during then, because the United States had been 200 years old. It's a classic.
Mm-hmm.
Has anybody read the book except me?
That's actually one book I have not read.
I just finished it the other day. I'd never read it. The first
far is
book,
it?
I never read it.
How far is it from? How different is the adaptation of the movie to the book?
Well, first of all,
Spoilers.
spoilers, yeah. Nobody makes it out really well off in either the book or the movie.
Well, shocker, it's a Stephen King book.
Right. Honestly, I think Stephen King has talked about how he has very little to do with a lot of the movies unless he writes them. They go off and do their own. A lot of authors have gotten mad, oh, they ruined my book, and he's always said, no, I got to check. You can still go look at the book. The book's right here. You didn't ruin my book. That's your movie. You made a shitty movie. Mm-hmm. And I completely understand. I would sell out too in a heartbeat. Bonehead, by the way, if you want to give us some money, we're more than happy to sell out to you in any second.
You got any movies coming out you want us to review? Ship them to us.
Ship them to us.
Screeners.
Yeah, we love free stuff. And you don't even have to give us money. Food,
Yeah.
diet soda,
Yeah.
Twinkies.
Yeah, if we can get some gristle down Chad, do we get hats for the kids?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyways, so back to the Carrie.
I'm already drinking meat juice tonight.
You're going to be drinking it all night, bitch.
Oh, Lord. Anyway, Carrie.
Yes, Carrie. So Brian De Palma, great filmmaker, right?
Yep.
Okay. Split
Steals
screen.
a lot.
Steals a lot.
But a
Still
great filmmaker.
stole a lot from Hitchcock,
Yes.
but lots of people. Tarantino has stolen
Oh,
a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
I think when you're considered an artist, it's called an homage.
Yeah, well, he made a big bunch of them homages.
The sincerest form of flattery.
Homaggies. So anyway, Carrie is, in my mind, he talks about if Stephen King, back to Stephen King, if you don't necessarily have to do the story straight, just as long as you get the spirit of it. I feel that after listening, I actually listened to it on the back and forth to work. I feel like they got the spirit of it.
Okay.
So that's my answer to you. Carrie in the book's chubby, covered in acne, not a very homely lady. And in the movie, Carrie is played by whom?
Sissy Spacek.
Not a homely person at all. Well, she may not be your type, but she's not hideous.
Okay.
Well,
Plus,
no,
she's a coal miner's daughter.
and she's proud to be a coal miner.
Yeah.
Well,
Somewhere in Butcher Holler.
I was about to say, and I'm not, like, as we've already established, the biggest Stephen King fan.
Which is a reason why we don't like him.
I admire Stephen King. I prefer, my favorite living author is Harlan Ellison. Now, that could change next week. Harlan's 80-something. Stephen King may move up a level. I hope it doesn't happen.
No, I'm pretty sure a complete and total anger and hatred keeps him going.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, too.
I hope it does.
And if you don't know
bitterness.
who Harlan Ellison is,
Read a book.
We read a book. We've met him, or 2 out of the 3 Boneheads have met him. We have good stories. Come to us at Scarefest or Comic-Con, and we'll take you aside, and you can buy us a drink, and we'll tell you all about it.
I will love it.
In fact, we'll tell you stories as long as the drinks are rolling.
Yeah.
And we don't have to pay for them, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But,
Or appetizers. Oh, my God, appetizers.
oh, yeah.
If you feed us.
Yeah.
Keep going.
But no, one thing I will say though about Stephen King, and if you've read Dance Macabre, he mentions Harlan Ellison.
And I actually pulled Dance Macabre out of my collection. These are actually my books.
They are aware of each other. They've talked to each other before. Anyway, the point being though is one of the things that pops up about Carrie is the role that plays as a female character at that time, coming out of the 1960s.
Well, the book takes place is actually a few years ahead. I think it's 78, 79 actually. 79, I think.
Yeah, but
I know. I'm just sorry, just giving you a little FYI on the book.
But what I'm saying is, though, that idea of Stephen King writing a female character and it being viewed as kind of, in some ways, heroic.
Yeah, she's a tragic figure.
Yeah, but she takes, in some ways, what's hers, which was not what was happening to women in horror.
No, but she is a murderer as well. I mean, she's a tragic figure, and she's obviously crapped on, made to suffer. She suffers and suffers and suffers and finally lashes out. Probably there's a lot of things that happen later on in our own culture with school shootings and stuff that we could relate of maybe people who were suffering and then lashed out. I don't know the whole story in those, and I'm not going to get into this. This is in a psychology class. However, Carrie's still a murderer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah,
she murders. In fact, in the book, she really murders the whole town. She makes lots of things burn and blow up as she makes her way to her mother. You know, she's not. Is she sympathetic or isn't she sympathetic?
Well, I think
because she's a mass murderer.
She is. I think that's one of the things, though, that you can get into. And again, not meaning it's a psychology class or a sociology class.
I don't know.
But how could you? The question becomes how many people in that town were at least vaguely aware of it. And I think it gets to a point where...
If they're in the high school, they were all aware of it.
And that's what I'm saying. At what point... And again, not just fighting the murder, but I think it makes her sympathetic that much more is if you want to buy the line that everybody in the town knew something was wrong and nobody had the courage to stand up and say, we should really help this girl.
Yeah.
And I think that gets into a lot of argument about who's really the monster. If you know something is going on, I think that's something that, again... just going by the movie, I think it's something that's still interesting. It's why you watch it. And yes, by the way, if she popped up outside my door, I'd be scared to death.
Well, it depends on if it's Carrie out of the book or Sissy Spacek from 1976.
Actually, I'm going to be horrified either way.
Yeah.
You pop up at 3 a.m. outside my door, I'm going to go ahead and say, you ain't getting in. But no, I think it becomes an interesting point as well, as far as when you look at, and I think the fact that, and I'm sure there's some gender and women's studies people that would have some different points on this, but I think it's interesting that, I think it's important that it wasn't a male that was picked on.
No.
It wasn't a...
And there's more to it, and the stuff that plays on in a lot of his later books. I mean, she doesn't get her period. I mean, she doesn't become a female, if you will, till later in life, and that's the same thing, and they're all shocked of how can she's 16, just now be starting, what's wrong with her, how can she not, and even the teachers are aggravated with her, and you can understand their aggravation, right? Mm-hmm. So, is she sympathetic, is she not? Obviously, her suffering is sympathetic, but it wasn't really until I read the book that I thought, I don't know why it never occurred to me, but God, she's not a good person. She kills so many people.
But could she have been? If I never know...
Yeah. Is that a nature over nurture thing?
Well, I don't know, and I'm saying, and I don't know, but I think that's what makes the book that much more interesting. Because if it becomes clear cut... Well, no, the character, I should say.
I understand.
I think that makes the character much more interesting, because if she should
and this is getting way too serious for both.
If she should have been a good person and she wasn't, like Chad, then that's just terrible.
I think she could have been. I think the cards are stacked against her.
Yeah.
Right? I think there's a lot of people out there, and this is how, and then we'll move on to the next. There's a lot of people out there who there's a lot of things that go against them. They've already got a lot, and then they still make it. And then there's a lot of people who have a lot of baggage, and all the cards are against them, and they don't make it, and then they blame other people for the rest of their lives. I think that's Carrie. She's a victim in the worst way. She's a victim, suffers, and then lashes out.
And then makes tons of other victims.
And makes tons of other victims. And victims out of the families of people who those children and people she murdered belong to. Right? And the lives she destroyed. I don't know. It's a kind of a serious thing. That's probably the reason why it had a sequel later on that sucks. Yeah. It's been remade twice. It was remade as a TV movie, which I've never seen. Have you seen it? Brian Fuller wrote it. For you Star Trek fans out there, or Hannibal fans.
I'm trying to figure out, is the TV movie the one that had the guy? No, that was actually the remake, because I was which one starred the older brother from Home Improvement as the bully?
Oh, that's Carrie too. Okay. The Rage.
Yeah.
Which is a sucky movie.
Yeah.
One cool shot at the end with the mirrors.
I thought you were going to say the one where his balls got shot off.
I don't remember that.
I think that happens.
Is it Jason London in that?
I don't remember.
By the way, if it doesn't happen, if you're a huge Carrie 2 The Rage fan and you're like, that didn't happen, I want you to think about what Chad could possibly be
thinking of. And then I want you to tweet us at Bonehead Humor Co. and let us know that you think we suck.
Shocker, I'm a sick, twisted idiot. I almost said Swist.
And why do you hate the Swiss?
And I knew we were, and then the Chloe Moretz version, which is directed by the lady who directed Boys Don't Cry.
Yeah.
Same lady, who's a talented filmmaker. To me, it adheres a little too much to the De Palma version, which is not necessarily the book.
I'm going to bring that up later, though. When a lot of these remakes and retellings, that's where they actually go wrong. Is they don't necessarily go back to the book. Mm-hmm. They go back to the film that came before and give homages, and I think that's an issue. And we'll talk about that with the later example that I'm going to bring up.
Well, anyway, there's a reason. It's a powerful story. Yeah. That's the reason why Stephen King keeps getting adapted. I actually was thinking about this because there's a lot of other authors out there sold a hell of a lot of books that don't have as many movies, and I think it's because whatever it is, he has the ability to reach in and pick something that's back here in your lizard brain that goes, oh, clowns, oh, something else.
Well, it's characters.
And nobody, Tarantino said this, nobody writes better three-dimensional characters. I don't care if you like him or not, read a couple of books. When you read his books, even if the story sucks, like the Tommyknockers or Needful Things, you love the characters.
Well,
you know those people, and you start to... You see them in your head.
Well, I was about to say, and you all are more of the experts on this, but even what little bit I've read, they're three-dimensional characters.
They're all
three-dimensional. Doesn't matter if you're the biggest fan or not. I agree with you. If you pick up one of his books and you read about a kid, it's written the way a kid would think.
Right.
It gives, you're like, yeah, no, that's a kid.
All right, Salem's Lot would be the next one on our chronological list. Anything to add about this? It was directed by Tobe Hooper. Tobe Hooper was famous for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Would go on to direct Second Unit on Poltergeist. If you're a fan of Poltergeist and Spielberg, you're like, Tobe Hooper directed Poltergeist. Look it up.
And there's still people that argue that point.
We could do a whole episode about how he was high on cocaine, and Zelda Rubinstein, a lot of people said that he was there, but Spielberg said it on...
You watch that movie, it looks like a
Spielberg movie.
Well, and I was going to say, and there was actually a special effects guy that had been silent about it for years, and he came out and he said,
yeah, Toby was there, but...
Spielberg did that noise.
Yeah, that was Spielberg.
He said Spielberg actually, I think the special effects guy said, Spielberg would set up the shot, get everything ready, and then you would have Tobe Hooper
adjust, and then he could do adjustments and things, and yeah. It's but anyway.
Honestly, this is one of the few that we're going to talk about that I have not seen.
I have it. I bought it a few months ago. It came out on Blu-ray, and I have it on Blu-ray, and I rewatched it, and I still enjoy it. Oddly enough, Salem's Lot was a really popular miniseries when it came out. Okay, and it has a hell of a cast. It starred Starsky or Hutch. I can't remember which one's which, but the blonde guy, David Soul. Right, I can't remember which one's which, but David Soul.
That's Hutch.
Bonnie Bedelia. It had...
Die Hard's Bonnie Bedelia, right?
Die Hard's Bonnie Bedelia. Nakatomi. Never forget. Anyway, it had Die Hard's Bonnie...
Did you...
James
Donnie Wahlberg!
Were you going to say Donnie Bonaducci?
James Mason. Have you all ever... And James Mason played the guy who looks out for Count Orlok, because basically they rip off Nosferatu's for the vampires. Very effective. Some of the scenes are still very effective after all this time. Have any of you read the book?
Nope.
I have read the book. Haley's read the book. You can talk, Haley. People want to hear you talk. Dog Butters has said, and other people have said they want to hear you talk.
Here's a question.
What?
It's a movie. It's a movie and book about vampires.
Yes.
So why is it called Salem's Lot, which is associated with witches?
Well, because actually it's called, the town is called Jerusalem's Lot.
Then this makes perfect sense.
And they shorten it, right?
And then they call it Salem's Lot, right? It's called Jerusalem's Lot, and people call it Salem's Lot. But the thing is he was, to me,
people are lazy.
Maybe a little bit of Matheson.
Just say the whole name.
Maybe a little bit of Matheson for I Am Legend, but I think Stephen King was the first one to really delve into this is a virus, and it overtakes people, and it overtakes the town slowly.
I bet you the Stephen King was just being lazy. I don't want to type Jerusalem every time we talk about this. I don't want my titles. That's too long of a title.
I don't get paid by the page.
I don't get paid by the...
That wasn't the first name of the book. He wanted to call it Second Coming, and his wife said call it something different.
And Chad hasn't even made it through the first one. Anyway, so Salem's Lot, the miniseries still holds up. They made a miniseries of it later on with Rob Lowe that's even less faithful to the book. Have you ever seen it?
No.
is terrible. They made it for TBS or TNT. I think TNT. Well, it doesn't matter. A Turner Network. It's less faithful. It actually changes the preacher, the minister in it all
That's
around.
played by James Cromwell, isn't it?
Yeah, which makes no sense because if you're a Stephen King fan, he shows back up in the Dark Tower series later on in the 7th book.
Mm-hmm.
So they killed him, which makes no sense if you're a Stephen King fan.
Yeah.
Oh yes, in the 5th book, you can just talk.
I want to correct you on air. I was trying to let you know.
Oh, no, please
No,
do.
please do. People want you to be interactive. She's now picking her nose. All right, moving on. Well, we got pictures. We can prove it.
I see it coming out of the top of your head.
Her brain itched. Anyway, so Salem's Lot, real quick, directed by Tobe Hooper, probably one of the good Tobe Hooper films. I recommend it. I wouldn't break my neck out to get it. I'd definitely read the book, actually. It's one of my favorite Stephen King novels.
Well, I was going to say, and it's actually the reason I know more about Salem's Lot than some of the other ones is because it also pops up a lot in pop culture. It's one of his early works. You would think, Carrie, but I mean, Salem's Lot gets mentioned in rap songs. It gets mentioned in, so there's all that sense.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a couple of them.
James getting down with the West Side.
All right. So
I'm
I know you
bi-coastal.
had a bunch of information, so let's go through this. Next up is The Shining, Stanley Kubrick.
Not to be confused with The Shining.
The Shining. You don't want to say The Shining. Why? Do you want to get sued? Right. So The Shining is really well known. It's a Stanley Kubrick film that people love. If you're a Stanley Kubrick fan, of course you love all of them. However,
It's also a great cast.
it's also got a great cast, right? However, Stephen King has said he doesn't like it.
Right.
And Stephen King gave a pass on The Dark Tower the other day. So sometimes I'm wondering if he's getting a check more on the side or whatnot. However, as an adaptation of a book, well, it takes place in a hotel, and the characters are kind of the same, but it pretty much ends there.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the setup is the same. But have you read the book?
No.
Have you read the book?
No.
Okay. Haley's read the book. All
Why
right.
is that? Why is Haley not here? And I'll just touch the cameras. I don't know.
Because you know
I feel like we should
because
split places for this
because
one.
of HR, you're not allowed to touch anything anymore.
Herman
Okay,
Ralston doesn't let you touch any of this stuff.
Anyway, so the movie's great. I enjoy the movie. However, I do agree with some of the criticisms of the movie. For example, the way they treat Shelley Duvall, Shelley Duvall's character, Jack Torrance's wife.
Uh-huh.
In the book, she's a strong woman. And later we'll get to the miniseries where Rebecca De Mornay played her. And actually, that's more accurate to the book. Now,
Right.
that miniseries is not as good as that movie.
Yeah, it's
Right?
right.
But it is more close and adheres more to the book.
Yeah.
The Shining's not my favorite book by Stephen King. It's a decent book. It's a good book, but I don't have an attachment to it like other people do.
Well, I think so.
Would you
much,
prefer they stayed at a Ramada Inn?
I mean, no. I have
Is there
been
Ramada?
to Estes Park. You know, I have been to the Stanley Hotel that it's based on. And then later they shot the miniseries there. But I've been there. I enjoyed it. I've taken the tour. I've been there twice. I had a red rum at the bar that they serve. Of course they do, right? However,
The waitress gets punched in the nose.
Oh, God.
I just,
Raves.
it's a good book. I just don't have an
Raves.
attachment to it like I do a lot of the other
Yeah,
ones.
I mean, after knowing that, and this was, again, this is just my warped brain of, I really did like the movie The Shining, but after knowing, Stephen King hated it, it doesn't follow the book. I had a hard time going back and reading the book, knowing that the movie was completely different.
I mean, it is and it isn't, right? So
Yeah.
they just kind of changed the characterization. So the complaints have always been, well, Jack Nicholson doesn't... I showed it to Christy a while back, and she was like, well, he's crazy from the get-go. And that is probably a complaint you could lob at it.
Yeah.
He doesn't slowly go crazy. He's crazy from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And Shelley Duvall is a one-dimensional character in there who just cries and runs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of...
She's basically a scream queen.
It's kind of sexist, right? In a sense.
Well,
They
but-
kill off... Well, I mean, she doesn't really fight for herself like she does in the book or the miniseries later on. I mean,
Yeah.
it's...
No, I think though what that movie has going for it, as you said, is Kubrick.
Yeah, it's Kubrick, because he's
The
a genius.
scene of the twins in the hallway,
Beautiful.
the blood on the elevator,
running through the snow maze.
The maze itself, which isn't in the book. In the book, they're attacked by topiaries that move, and that maze is much scarier.
And I think that's it. I think that's why it is what it is. And I said I haven't read the book, but I do have a hard time. I'm kind of with Chad. That burns so many images into my head.
Because he's a great filmmaker.
Oh, it scared me as a kid.
And I've looked at my wife and kids since seeing the movie, and I think maybe I should go get an axe. Maybe this should be.
And having two brothers who were as creepy as the twins in that, I was like, oh God, any minute.
Yeah, you're gonna.
It has great scenes.
We want to play with you, Chad.
But the series, all right, I'll tell you two quick stories. One, he says it's a beautiful car with no engine.
Yeah.
And I understand what he's talking about. There's not a lot of heart to it. But you could lob that
like 2001.
You could lob that at a lot of Kubrick films, and we've heard a lot of people say
it's the only Kubrick movie I haven't seen.
Oh, it's beautiful, but
rush out and get that.
He was like, "Really, we need Ryan
and mute it and just watch it."
Anyway, that's one. And the other story Stephen King tells is about him. One morning he was shaving. Tabby, his wife, says, "You got a phone call. It's Kubrick." Kubrick's on the phone. He's shaving. He stops shaving. Oh my God! I go talk to Stanley. He's making this movie about me. And all of a sudden he goes, "Hey, Stanley, it's Steven. Do you think ghost stories are inherently positive, or that that's a happy ending?" And he goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, if it's a ghost story, then that means you live on past death, so it's inherently a happy ending." And he said, "Well, Stanley, what about hell?" And all of a sudden there was a pause on the phone, and Stanley goes, "I don't believe in hell." That was the end of the conversation. That was the only question he ever asked him about the book.
Yeah.
That was all that was in his head.
Well, that's typical.
And I get where Stanley was going.
Yeah.
If there's a ghost story, and that's probably the reason why he kind of...
Yeah, you just getting rid of this finite shell that actually arguably holds you back.
Move on out into the ether and do whatever it is, past this body spiritually, however you want to live. I get both sides of that. And I don't know that I'd have been smart enough to Stephen King to say, what about hell? It wouldn't have occurred to me automatically. What about you two?
Oh, it wouldn't have. But Nummy Muffin
I would have been like,
over here making noise.
Yeah, my kitty cat's over there.
Nummy Muffin Cuckoo Butter.
All right, let's keep on moving.
What's next?
Creepshow. We're going in chronological as the movies were released.
Okay.
Now, and Creepshow had an adaptation of one of his works, and the other two he wrote for it.
I'm pretty sure it's all written for it. I don't know which one was an adaptation. Creepshow 2 has an adaptation.
The Raft is an adaptation.
And it's written by Romero, but it's technically not. He wrote this. He and Romero. We've talked about this in a Romero episode. Yeah. He had a cameo in Knight Riders. They became friends, and then he wrote the screenplay for Creepshow, and they made the movie. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it was a really big hit for all of them. Mm-hmm. So, I don't have a lot to say about Creepshow that we haven't already said before.
Yeah, I say we just...
Moving along. Cujo. He has said that this is... Dee Wallace should have won an Oscar.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chad. I know you have some stuff about it.
No, it's just that he thinks Dee Wallace's performance is the best performance of any of his film adaptations.
Yes.
And
it's also Dee Wallace.
Yeah, and I could be wrong based on my warped child memory, but this is the first Stephen King movie I actually ever saw.
Yeah.
And I actually had a Saint Bernard as a pet.
And it was rabid.
No.
No, Chad was.
Oh.
The St. Bernard was.
I get him confused.
The St. Bernard tried to stay away. Chad, what it is.
By the way, I did not name him. Poor Bruiser was the friendliest dog I ever had.
Aww.
But no,
Bruiser.
I mean, Dee Wallace, just a heartbreaking performance.
It's a heartbreaking performance. The differences between the book, and this is something I hadn't read for the audience for the last 12 months, I've been trying to... I thought I'd read every Stephen, and I hadn't. I thought I'd read most, and really I was missing a chunk, and a lot of it was the early stuff. I read Cujo. Mm-hmm. Cujo the movie is a great story. The book is a great story, but it's not a very well-written book. I think it's all over the damn place.
Well, and Cujo was the first Stephen King book I read, too.
Well, and then here's the thing, too, about that book. Stephen King barely remembers writing it. He was an extreme alcoholic at the time.
I believe
Yeah.
he was what the kids refer to as toe up.
He was toe up. He had, in fact, I've read he has no recollection of rewriting it.
Yeah, he does. He has no memory. He has no memories of writing this book, which is why I think it's one of his lesser.
It is a messy. It's a messy, but it's a great story.
But my God,
Well, I was
the
about to
movie.
say, and that's and I said this first Stephen King that I read. I was probably 6th or 7th grade.
Yeah.
And somebody said, you should read Stephen King. You like that stuff. Which actually was funny was I like science fiction
But I mean,
at the time. And
Close enough.
and D.
Science-
Wallace,
yeah.
D. Wallace's performance in this was
Science
so
fiction, pedophile book, whatever.
I mean, it was so heart wrenching. She actually spent 3 weeks in the hospital afterwards.
I didn't know that.
From exhaustion.
Well, now let really quick. You and I, were you there? Yeah. We met Dee Wallace. Maybe one of the sweetest ladies I've ever met in my entire life.
Right. Yep.
So there's probably a reason that she has played everybody's mother, from Cujo's mom to E.T.'s mom to the Critters' mom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
She is inherently sweet.
She's the Florence Henderson of sci-fi and horror.
That's really.
I don't know about that. Anyway, moving right along.
So
Cujo.
yeah. Go ahead.
Well, what I was about to say, there's one big difference between the book and the movie. And Stephen King agrees with it.
Is this about the obsession, the possession of the dog?
No, that is a little bit, but it only kind of touches on that and doesn't really finish it off later. That's what I'm talking about the book being all over the damn place. The boy dies in the book. The little boy.
Yeah, that boy dies in the book.
little boy dies in the book, and Stephen King has said, I'm glad they didn't kill him because it had been too much in the movie.
And you know, the other thing, Cujo was directed by
Louis Teague?
Louis Teague.
Alligator.
Yeah, Alligator. Stephen King actually lobbied to get him to direct this movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because of Alligator.
I didn't know that.
He really loved Alligator, and he wanted Louis Teague, but it originally was being directed by Peter Medak.
Peter Matt, who directed the Changeling.
The Changeling, Subspecies 2.
Just Species 2. So Species 2 is a different...
Oh, God. I
Species 2.
actually wrote Subspecies
It's
2.
Species 2.
I can't believe
Which is
I
a
did that.
terrible movie.
It's a terrible movie. One of Full Moon's lesser movies.
Yeah.
But also, they.
I'm talking about
have too many
Species
great-
2 is a
Honestly,
terrible
I've never
movie,
seen
too.
The Changeling, but he directed The Craze, which is
From the 80s version?
From the 80s version,
Yeah.
and which is now known as Legend, starring
Tom Hardy, which is a good performance in a bad movie.
But yeah, Louis Teague, who went on to direct Cat Eyes, which we'll be discussing.
Yeah.
Jewel of the Nile.
I didn't realize he directed the sequel to Romance in the Stone.
Yeah, the best Jay Leno movie ever, Collision Course with
with Pat Morita.
Yeah, with Pat Morita and James's favorite, the Justice League of America TV movie that was absolutely atrocious. That was Louis Teague.
When you look at the Corman...
Well, at least he had Alligator and Cujo.
At least he had Alligator and Cujo.
That's more than us.
Yeah, but it's just amazing that he wanted Louis Teague to direct this based on Alligator. And then he made this amazing movie, Cujo, that really takes place inside of a damn car for an hour and a half.
It does.
And it is one of the most heart-wrenching movies. I mean, even as a kid, I could barely get through it. It was so rough.
Yeah, anyway, Dee Wallace, great. Do we have anything else to add to that?
No.
Okay.
I'm good. Let's move on.
All right, The Dead Zone.
That is my favorite Stephen
Shocker.
King movie.
And why?
Because, no, actually, it's the one that has the most literary allusions.
It's Christopher Walken.
The Raven?
Just admit it.
No, it starts with
Legend
the
of
Raven.
Sleepy Hollow.
It starts with the Raven. Within 5 minutes, it's got a Legend of Sleepy Hollow quote, being a bachelor and in nobody's particular debt. They didn't worry their head about it. And then he actually makes a few Washington Irving references.
There's a couple.
Because he pulled the Rip Van
Winkle.
It's also, I think...
rips off the Manchurian Candidate. I don't know where I pulled that from.
I got a good guess.
Well, hold on, real quick. It's directed by David Cronenberg, and if you're a horror fan out there and you don't know who David Cronenberg is, once again, I have a gun. Here's a pistol. Eat a bullet.
But look up Nightbreed.
Really?
No, hold on. Here's one. Look up Jason 10.
Ooh, good point.
But actually, there's some things about that movie. I do love Christopher Walken, but I actually do think I like it because most people don't know who Stephen King lobbied, and didn't get it this time, to star as Johnny Smith, generic name boy.
Who?
Bill Murray.
Really?
Stephen King wanted Bill Murray in that role. He thought Bill Murray would be able to do it and bring...
I see
that makes more sense.
That fits.
Have you read the book? Once again, am I going to say this question? By the way, this is another one that I've read in the last 12 months.
That's the one I want to read.
I want to read it,
It's
too.
really good. Christy even liked it.
Just because I really like Anthony Michael Hall.
So, anyway, read the book.
What the hell's wrong with you?
I actually think the movie, once you've read the book, because the movie does such a good job of making him three-dimensional and his absolute torture. He's someone who is tortured, has all this stuff happens to him, and then ends up trying to do the right thing.
Well, and there's so much of that film that happened by accident as well. The scene where he's in the hospital bed and he sees the fire and he starts to sweat.
They're supposed to be shooting that at a turkey farm?
And he starts to sweat.
Yeah. Right now, our Twitter sphere will be blowing up.
It'll be like,
let James speak!
two things about that scene that are really relevant.
Thanksgiving.
What is it? Quick.
The reason he looks like he's sweating is when they did the flames, they actually set the room on fire. And
as one tends to do.
And they sprayed Christopher Walken down with flame retardant.
And then they...
Yeah, I don't think you can use that word anymore.
and then prior
and the
to...
flame retardant, it was a happy accident. He wasn't supposed to be sweating. It looked so much better than he was, like he was actually responding to the fire, even though it wasn't there. But the true story behind that was they had just hosed him down literally because of insurance, because somebody did get burned very badly on the set.
What was the other one?
The other thing is, when he does that, that was caused by... Christopher Walken is actually, as he plays a lot of horror things, most people don't know this, he hates guns. And there's a movie called At Close Range with Sean Penn where there's a scene where he actually looks shocked, and it's because Sean Penn put down the prop gun and picked up a real gun right before the scene started, and Christopher Walken actually freaked out but still did the scene. He hates guns. He had David Cronenberg walk off set.
Chad hates guns.
I know.
Hashtag Craig Dennis. Hashtag suck it. Keep going.
He told David Cronenberg about it, and David Cronenberg said, "Can we use that?" And he said, "Sure, if you think it'll be great." So those scenes where he does that, David Cronenberg walked off set and held up a .357 and fired it in the air.
Oh, that's great!
And
Is that true story?
Yes.
Oh.
And so that's why when he does that, they edit out the sound, but he was firing a gun up in the air.
That reminds me of the Werner Herzog story with Klaus Kinski.
I was sitting here thinking Werner Herzog.
And actually, Stephen King and David Cronenberg both based the performance, the book, or in the performance, on this actual guy that claimed to have psychic power, Peter Horker. But anyway, he fell.
Horker?
Don't
do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Horker.
Oh, I thought you were going to go Horker.
No.
He fell off a ladder, and he claimed he could see stuff, and he was trying to present.
Kick down a well, eyes go cross.
So anyway, the other thing about this film, though, is if you're a Creepshow fan,
I am.
It almost had a kind of cross-reference. Hal Holbrook was going to play Tom Skerritt's role. And Dino De Laurentiis...
Top Guns. Tom Skerritt.
Every sheriff in most shows ever's Tom Skerritt.
That's true, but keep going.
Yeah.
Hal Holbrook was supposed to play that role. That's who Cronenberg wanted. And I guess Stephen King was okay with it. But Dino De Laurentiis said, "Who the hell is Hal Holbrook? We're getting somebody I know." And he stepped in. So there was a lot of fights between, quote-unquote, the studio system and Cronenberg about this, because he also wanted his friend who had done all his other music for the films, which is...
Howard...
Howard Shore.
Howard Shore. You know how I know Howard Shore? He'd go on to do the score for a little movie called Lord of the Rings.
Well, Howard Shore had done most of his other films. Matter of fact, there's only three films that Cronenberg has done. And the studio, he wanted Howard Shore to do it, and the studio kicked in and went, no. That's not a name. You want Michael Kamen.
Yeah. Who is, by all stretches, a very successful composer.
Michael Kamen came in and did it. So Cronenberg, what makes it interesting to me is that movie turned out really well, but I didn't know there was so much backfighting about it between who was going to do the music, who was going to do this, how they're going to do this, and all the happy accidents that made that into a good movie.
Lesser known fact, Christopher Walken was actually hit repeatedly in the head with a bat till he actually got psychic powers.
That's actually
neither one of you knew that.
Really quick, if you read the book and like the movie, the thing is, and not till I seen it through somebody else's eyes, Christy, when I was rewatching it with her and her commentary, because she read the book, never seen the movie. It is very much, I'm trying to think of how a Cliff Notes version of it. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that, it does, to me, it's still, she did not feel that it got Johnny's pain down. She doesn't think the movie succeeds at that. Because in the book, he suffers. And you go through how he suffers. And the doctor, she doesn't think they did a very good job with the doctor that helps him because there's even more story to that. But, how are you going to do that in an hour and a half movie?
Yeah.
So I give them credit and say, they got the Cliff Notes version of that down. I do see where she's saying, I don't know that I feel Johnny suffering as much as I did after reading that book. And for some odd reason, he is an extremely, where I was talking about Carrie's a mass murderer, he's extremely sympathetic.
What? And that came out in 1983?
The movie came out in 83, yeah.
Because that's one of the things, too, is that there's Sin Fantastique, or whatever the name.
Cinema Fantastique.
Yeah. There's a lot of scenes, and when they did the coverage of it, there were 3 or 4 scenes that they covered that are not in the movie.
Well, that's not unheard of.
Well, but what's interesting is one of them goes much darker than what we saw on the screen. There is a line where when in the future vision of him Sheen getting ready to set off the bomb and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But when he says, "I'll hack your arm off," the scene that Cronenberg also filmed was at one point they filmed it where eventually the guy just does it. There was a scene filmed where he literally pulls out a gun, shoots him, and cuts his hand off, and that's one of the scenes in the thing is him taking the severed hand and pushing it onto the thing.
No, he is much more, and they do a good job with the backstory of him too. So in the movie, he doesn't really show up till the end.
Yeah.
And in the book, of course, you're allowed to do that in the book. You see where he starts from point A to point B. All right. Yep. Anything else about the Dead Zone?
Nope.
No.
All right. The next one would be Christine.
Oh.
So, John Carpenter says it's not a very... John Carpenter directed it.
Yeah.
Here's a little history about it. I don't know if it's in your notes. John Carpenter ended up directing that because he directed The Thing.
Right.
Which is John Carpenter's best film. Which is, to me, probably...
Big Trouble in Little China, you son of a...
No, it's The Thing. I love Big Trouble, but it's The Thing. It's his best film.
It's bar none.
It's his best film. I don't care.
From L.A.
There's people...
Oh, God.
I know Miranda's out there screaming Halloween right now. I'm sorry. It's The Thing.
Halloween.
No, I was
going
to say...
Halloween probably has the most cultural impact, but it's The Thing. The Thing came out right around E.T. Guess what? That summer audience of 82, they did not want to see people ripped apart and things running across.
John Carpenter's whole movie career is just one tragic note after another, making really great films that just bombed horribly.
There's been some success.
There's been some.
But he has had a hard time. Escape from New York was a success. Anyway, back to, so his next movie was going to be Firestarter. That's the Stephen King novel he wanted to do. When The Thing came out and started the tank, guess who got fired from Firestarter?
I couldn't even guess.
Can you imagine what John Carpenter's Firestarter would have been?
That would have been infinitely better.
Wouldn't it?
George C. Scott would have been a damn Indian.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But anyway, Christine. All right, I read the book. Here's the thing. Because to me, the car's too cool.
So
let
me ask you.
John Carpenter has said the car's too cool to be scared of.
In case you don't ask, I have read this book.
Okay. What do you think?
About the book compared to the movie?
I mean, the movie does a Cliff Notes version of the book.
Yeah, the book is infinitely better.
It is, but do you not agree that it probably gets... you get an approximation by watching the movie?
Yeah.
Whereas there's a couple others that just go off the rails.
Yeah, no, it's pretty much...
It is kind of the book.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just so much more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you actually feel for the character.
That's the thing with King books, like we discussed earlier, is there's a reason why his books are ungodly thick. He spends so much time on character development.
Right.
So much so that you can't really put all that into a movie. You'd have a 4 or 5 hour, sometimes it's an 8 hour movie. But yeah, no, it's a really clipped down version. And
the difference is that probably the car comes out bad in the movie, and that's not necessarily true in the book.
Right.
His bones are in the back. He's the guy that owned it beforehand. He's kind of part of the car. The car's part of him.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't quite explain it. I understand why they did that for the movie. It makes a little less sense. It makes more sense if you're reading it. There's certain things you just accept, don't you agree, in a book that you have a hard time with in a movie. That's all I got to say about Christine. I don't think it's actually a terrible movie. It's got a great soundtrack.
Yeah.
It's got some beautiful shots. It's as well made as you could make about a killer car.
Yeah, I mean the only
what
interesting
about the car?
We'll get to that in a later episode.
The only interesting fact I knew about Christine was listening to the audio, and it has nothing to do with the Stephen King conversation. Just that when they were filming it, a little known director known as Sam Raimi showed up on the set one day
He was actually just finished shooting Evil Dead.
How did he get there?
Then John Carpenter never explained it. Just that he just showed up. I guess he knew somebody who brought him up there.
That's funny.
And it was during the scene where, what's his name, gets crushed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who you interviewed?
Who I interviewed.
Yeah.
Who did not go well.
But it's really
the interview
funny.
went all right. They just weren't all overly friendly before the interview.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's really funny. And I know this is talking about Stephen King, but there's speaking of, I mentioned Harlan Ellison earlier. They just
You're going to get it back in, aren't you?
they just made a book
He's going to start talking about Coons, and I'm going to lose my shit.
God, they just wrote a book called Lit Fuse about Harlan Ellison.
You know he didn't write Goosebumps.
Harlan Ellison, Lit Fuse. This is all about. But one of the things that's in the book is a ton of photos of him with different authors. Many of them before they were famous. There's him with a very, very young George R.R. Martin before he wrote anything.
Yes.
And one of the things that pops up is that these people attract other people like them. Like authors
That's true.
tend to like
a moth to a flame.
Yeah, like authors like hearing other authors talk. If you're interested in making films, you want to hear the director or depending what your interest is. And so I think that's kind of it's circular.
Yeah.
So it's not.
And I was just pointing at us. No, I was like, we all have certain things.
What he was really doing.
Right.
Again, if you're listening to the actual iTunes, Joe was doing the wrap up side.
I didn't do it consciously, but I'm not going to argue that it's back here in my brain.
It has become part of its.
That's what I meant. So, anything else about Christine?
No.
Children of the Corn's next.
You know what? That's probably my wife's favorite because we watch it every Halloween.
I loved it
so
much as a kid.
Did you rewatch it?
Yeah, I watched it like 2 years ago.
And
it does not hold
short
up.
Story, right?
It's not even a good short story.
But you know what's interesting about the short story because I have read.
It's on a night shift, right?
It's been a long time, but the way that the creature is defined, I read it and I was like, there is no way you could make this without it being either goofy looking, or really hackneyed. Like
it costing $1 billion.
Yeah.
Well, you know how they did the scene where the dirt comes up out of the ground? You know how they did it?
They hired Bugs Bunny.
No,
He
upside
was on
down.
his way to Albuquerque.
Honest, upside down wheelbarrow.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. They dug a trench. They put the wheelbarrow in. Put it on a track. That's how they got that.
Pulled it.
The dirt. I forget the name of the beast. It's some crazy.
What is that guy's name? The redheaded guy? Is it Corey?
The Burbs. You mean the Burbs guy?
Yeah.
I have no idea what his name is.
Oh no, he's in a great episode of It's Always Sunny.
Oh, he is.
The 80s one.
Yeah.
At the ski school.
Yep.
We should do a whole show on ski school. Or 80s comedies. Anyway, so I don't have anything to add to Children of the Corn. It stars Linda Hamilton and Peter Bogdanovich. I don't remember.
Peter Horton, who went
was
on to do one of my
30-something.
favorite shows.
30-something.
No, not 30-something. But, actually,
what's your favorite show? You got to say it. You can't
The one with the devil.
Brimstone.
Oh, that's right. He was Brimstone. One of my favorite shows, too.
John Glover.
This is why me and James love each other. Yeah.
We're going to have to wrap up in the next few minutes.
But,
didn't even get to any of the movies.
We're going to get to it in a second.
Driving through the thing, that's the beginning of the movie that I think that's actually the part to me that is most terrifying, is when they can't get any other radio station, they just start getting all the very uber, and it does make me think about, and I think that's gone now, because you have XM radio, you have all of that, but that back in the day when you would get to those places where there was nothing.
It was the one thing
That's
about
very much
the
of its time.
the one thing you say about Children of the Corn, it made a hell of a South Park episode.
Yeah, it did. And you're right. I mean, I just drove out west, and there's 300-400 miles of Kansas, and there's not a damn thing.
Yeah.
Right? And yeah, I can imagine if you're on a 2-lane road and it's the 80s.
Out west, it means you drove to Paducah.
Have you been to Paducah?
I'm scheduled to go to Paducah.
I've never been to Paducah.
Well, if you
Next is Firestarter.
Woo!
Firestarter.
The unexplained, why the hell is George C. Scott trying to be an Indian?
I'm a Firestarter.
They had a large Native American in the book with one eye. And he is clearly Native American. He is clearly a killer. And he's almost 6 foot something. If you've ever read the book, he's really tall and mean and oppressive looking. And you know who they hired to play him?
George C. Scott
George
with a spray on tan.
Patton Scott.
Was the guy
Dumbest
from
casting ever.
Was the guy from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest not available? And
I honestly, that's who he looks like in the book.
He wasn't even menacing. He was like a sweet grandfather type character.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Drew Barrymore is the girl. That's fine.
Yeah.
Is it David Keith or Keith David?
It's David Keith. Keith David is in The Thing.
Yeah.
And Keith David is an acting god.
Yes, he is.
David Keith is in An Officer and a Gentleman.
Yeah.
And is not an acting god. He's not a bad actor.
That movie, man.
Heather Locklear's in that, and Heather Locklear is terrible. Pretty, but terrible.
I don't even remember Heather
She's
Locklear.
the mother.
I don't even remember that.
Martin Sheen is the guy that runs the shop.
I remember that. But yeah, David Keith, it just seemed like he cried the entire time and had nosebleeds.
So that's true. He's different in the book. Yeah. But that movie is pretty spot on to the book. Have you ever read it? It is pretty close to the book. I just read it a few months ago, like I said, when I was going through it. I couldn't believe how close it was and how much it sucked.
God,
because there's no reason for it to suck.
It's so boring.
Even Stephen King said, back to the spirit thing.
Yeah.
I've had where they've changed it, but they got the spirit, and then and he used Firestarter as an example, and then they did pretty much the book, and the movie's terrible.
I remember watching it with you in your hospital bed when you were suffering from pneumonia.
Yeah, because that was the only good thing about being in the ICU in October was AMC. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. by myself and was riding the bullets on.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that one later.
Yeah, I really like it.
He loves David Arquette.
And Mick Garris. But anyway, so Firestarter, I have nothing to add other than I would have loved to have seen John Carpenter's Firestarter.
I would have loved to have seen it because
and it's a great visual book.
That movie was successful too, if I'm not mistaken.
I have no idea. It's a terrible movie.
It is. It's terrible.
All right. Next is Cat's Eye. Now, most of these were done by Dino De Laurentiis, and Dino De Laurentiis is a famous Italian producer.
Sure.
All these were shot in North Carolina. He had a studio in Raleigh-Durham, right there in North Carolina, in the 80s. Big, successful.
He made the Treat was made.
Yeah, he made the
full circle last time.
He made the King Kong from the 70s. And good God, the King Kong lives from the 80s. So he also produced Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, FYI.
Yes.
If you're a Sam Raimi fan.
Yep.
We went to
Cheddar's.
A restaurant actually.
O'Reilly.
That's connected to, I guess, his daughter. And that was the coolest thing about it. And I forget where we were.
Oh, the lady on the TV.
Yeah. And they had hit some of his movie posters on the wall. They did not put up Evil Dead.
I think that's his granddaughter.
Do you know the most significant part about Cat's Eye in the Stephen King film history?
No.
It's the first Stephen King movie to be given a PG-13.
Really? Well, that makes sense. Well, it's basically made up of this cat going around following these 3 stories that were basically written. The 2, Quitters, Inc., and then the other one is the guy from Airplane.
Robert Hayes.
Robert Hayes is in the one, and the mobster is going to kill his wife. Those 2 stories are in the night shift, and he has to go around the building. Mm-hmm. And then with the little monster attacking the girl, who's once again played by Drew Barrymore.
Yeah. Well, actually, the Robert Hayes and the Drew Barrymore stories are 2 of my... I love those 2 stories.
I like Quitters, Inc. too, with James Woods. And basically what it is they torture these people to make them quit cigarettes. So... Yeah. Cat's Eye is one of those things I hadn't seen for a long time and saw it last year.
It's a guilty pleasure.
It's not bad.
It's not bad.
It's not bad. It's not like Firestarter.
But
it's not.
Oh, I just remember that little troll.
Yeah, I like the little troll. And then the troll does the whole thing with the cat.
Do you know there was they actually shot a whole thing, and I wish they would release it on a special edition. There's a whole beginning part of that movie that was shot that explains why the cat's so interested in all these people.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And they cut that out?
They cut De Laurentiis didn't like it, so they cut it.
Oh.
Because he had a lot, in the making of these movies, he had a lot to...
Well, he also produced Conan the Barbarian and Conan the Destroyer.
A lot of the history of Stephen King movies about how they were going to go one direction, and they went this direction, is because of Dino De Laurentiis.
And they had a falling out sometime in the 80s. I don't know the whole story between he and Stephen King.
He just kept interfering.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as I said, and that's what happened with the Dead Zone, too, and that's what I found fascinating was... I said series of happy accidents that worked out in the Dead Zone, but not so much other places.
I would have loved to have seen that.
I would have loved to see it.
I wonder if that footage exists.
It exists. It's just, I don't know if it's been lost in time or they're just never going to release it.
This episode's going to run a few minutes longer.
Just one of those Cat's Eyes. It's just Cat's Eyes is not one of those more widely publicized Stephen King movies.
All right. How many more could we get through? You want to do Silver Bullet?
Let's do Silver Bullet.
I like Silver Bullet. It's based on Psycho the Werewolf.
Yeah. Did you know the werewolf costume wasn't even done when they started shooting that movie?
That makes sense. He doesn't show up till 2/3 through the movie.
Yeah, that they had started making the movie before the main part of the movie was even done. And there's so many, and if you look at it, there are issues with that werewolf.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I don't remember, but I'm sure Gary Busey's in it.
Yeah.
Corey Haim is the kid in the wheelchair. It's I enjoy it. It's a little uneven. Parts of it are jokey, and parts of it are dead serious.
Again, this falls into the Dino De Laurentiis issue. Do you know who was originally going to direct that?
No.
Don Coscarelli.
Oh, that would have been cool.
Yeah, Phantasm and Bubba Hotep's.
Yeah, Don Coscarelli, my favorite. I'm not a huge Phantasm fan, but Bubba Hotep.
There was some he was signed. He was ready to go. He could not get over creative differences with De Laurentiis, so he left.
Well, I was going to say the other part of that though is and I'm just jumping a little bit, but the graphic adaptation of that was Bernie Wrightson.
Yeah.
And it was originally planned to be a calendar.
Yeah.
He and Stephen King collaborated on a calendar, and then it became the illustration. But if you can find the Bernie Wrightson illustrated version, they're beautiful.
They're beautiful. They're absolutely. I got it off the Bookmobile when I was a kid.
Yep.
Honestly, they had it in the Bookmobile.
I got it out of the middle school library, which was hilarious because there was a shooting that was linked to Stephen King at that time, and that was the one book they left there.
Yep.
All right.
I got an interesting side note about Silver Bullet. This is for James. Do you know something that Gary Busey and Everett McGill share? They're both the two main stars of that movie.
What?
They were both killed by Steven Seagal. Gary Busey, Under Siege 1,
and Everett McGill, Under Siege 2, Dark Territory. Which was directed by that one guy who directed Fortress 2.
Yep.
Yeah, anyway.
James's favorite actor, Steven Seagal.
That's not at all
Had
true.
to make, it makes us watch.
That's not true.
All right, so that's it for our Stephen King episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're actually going to come back and start with Maximum Overdrive for our next Stephen King episode.
The magnum opus of car movies.
The magnum opus of car movies. Spot, anything to say before we go?
You guys read Sutter Kane?
Haha, that's a reference to John Carpenter. We'll see you next week. I'm Joe Lewis.
I'm Pepsi. I got nothing.
You're Pepsi.
You did James Thomas for
James
now.
Thomas for
Pepsi,
now.
MacBook,
And of course,
Cheetos.
And until those people pay us. Till that next week, we've got Haley behind the camera. We'll see you then. Toodles.
Yo, yo. My drink looks like meat juice.
Yeah.
Look
Your
at that.
face looks like me.
Look at that.
That's the drink's fault.
Anyway,
It's like
So-
a thing of hamburger sits out too long.
the thing is about Stephen King, and I'm going to just ignore the. Did you just spit that in my carpet? You just spit that in my.
We're going to have to start all over.
Do you know that shit stains?
I really didn't mean to.
Andrew got it on that free couch I got. Do you know how much that couch cost me?
Oh my God, did you kill the bed bugs?
No, God, no. You sit right there because you got to finish. We
I'm
can't
gonna snot
restart.
on your shirt.
We can't restart.
Now we're going to restart. I can't. This is an outtake, right? Because God, it better be an outtake.
Mm-hmm.